And now we got it off, and basically you can see the rest of the engine here. Basically you have, this is each one of the cylinders. That's where the air goes. These are coolant passages here for coolant to go into the cylinder heads. These are the cylinder heads. This is the block. These are the there's some crud down in here. These are the lifters. Actually, the lifters are down in there, and these open and close the valves above the cylinders to let the coolant, the air and the fuel into the cylinder to burn. That's what those valves are for. And you can see actually real clearly right here where we have a white gooey mess. Now if you look at, again, you always compare everything. These other three coolant passages are nice and clean, and you can see they're nice and clean. This one right here has oil and coolant mix. That's why it's got that creamy kind of milky color. If you see that color, you got oil and coolant mix, and that's a bad thing. Now this one, luckily, oil is leaking into the coolant. So if you have coolant leaking into the oil, that can get into your engine and damage the engine. This particular one, there's oil leaking into the coolant. It mixes up that white mixture, and it's a dead giveaway. It's that creamy type mixture. It's either the gaskets failed, which is very likely, and this is also where our oil's been seeping out of here, where all that buildup was. This is just a gasket that we're going to go ahead and replace, and that's it right there. And you can see a ton of crud all in that gasket. It's very obvious when you compare them to the other ports there, and you can see anytime you see something different stand out, there's something wrong. Also, this is that same cylinder that we saw the real clean upper part of the intake, or lower part of the intake. It was real clean. Most likely we had coolant dumping in there, causing that. So we're gonna go ahead and get these old gaskets off, clean it all up. This comes off. This is a gasket here. This is all gasket material. We're gonna pull all this off and go ahead and replace all this. This gasket's what was leaking oil down the front side of the engine. So we're gonna go ahead and take all these off. If you look real closely at gaskets, you can see where they're leaking too. This one was actually cracked and broken right here. You see that? These get brittle and they crack and they break, and they're not. They don't last forever. So anyway, these pull right off. This is another little coolant bypass hose right here. This fits into the intake and has a bolt that holds it down, and there's another little hose that hooks right next to it. I left it connected. I'll clean it up real good and put it back together. Okay, these brand new gaskets, these are Fel Pro. If you're gonna get gaskets, get a good brand. Obviously, you don't want to do any job you're putting a gasket in, you don't have to redo. Fel Pro, we've used them for years. They really make a good quality gasket, and not only that, they've made improvements in many of their gaskets over the OEM design. Some of these General Motors have, all the manufacturers have certain issues, but some of the General Motors engines do have a lot of problems with their gaskets. And again, this car's got a lot of miles on it. It's not uncommon to get 80, 90, 100,000 miles and have a gasket leak. You have many dissimilar metals touching, and trying to seal those for a long period of time is very difficult. So we got ourselves a nice set of Fel Pro lower intake manifold gaskets. We're going to go ahead and install these. These do not take any kind of sealant, no RTV, no gasket maker or anything. These are made to fit right on bare, clean metal. We've cleaned these up nicely. We did not use a sandpaper wheel or anything. That tends to create valleys in the aluminum, and we don't want to do that. We want a nice flat aluminum surface. So we put nice good new gaskets back on. These line up and they hold in place by these little anchor pins. So one thing, when you clean this out, make sure you take a little rag and just dip it in where all your screw holes are, because they'll be cleaner in there. Whatever cleaner you use to clean the old gasket off will be dipped down in there. We did put a rag, we stuffed a rag in each one of the cylinder holes so that nothing would fall down into the cylinders. But take a rag and just take the corner and get the majority of that cleaner out. You don't want anything to mess with the installation of the new gasket. Nice, clean, dry, bare metal. Yeah, these basically just sit right on there. As long as you have the little dowel pins lined up, they sit right on. Then we got to put these pieces on here. If you look closely at these gaskets, you can see how they install. They'll line right up with the other gasket. It also has instructions with the gaskets and tells you to add a little dab of RTV only to these 4 spots. Where these gaskets meet, you can put a little dabble of RTV, but that's about it. And you just put a little dabble just to seal that little spot there. Okay, now the new gaskets are on. Now we're going to carefully, because you don't want to move these gaskets. If you disturb them and pull them out of place, it's a heck of a time trying to line it up. So basically we're going to get the cleaned up lower intake. Okay, now we got it all ready to lay the new lower intake in. And you basically want to line everything up. Try not to knock the gaskets off. The only thing you really got to line up is that hose in the back. It has to pop right in there. And it basically just sits down there, just sits nice and flat right on it. Now at this point, you want to make sure you don't have anything stuck between the intake and the gaskets. Make sure it's even all the way around. Make sure there's nothing that can hold you back from tightening it up. Basically look all the way around, make sure there's no wiring or anything stuck in there. This does need to be torqued to a certain spec, which I'm going to let you know that in just a moment. We're going to go ahead and drop the bolts back in there. Most of the time, if you're doing an intake or valve cover or something that's got to be torqued, normally it's torqued from the inside out, meaning you go work from the inside out so that you keep the same amount of pressure all the way around. But always refer to the service manual or the instructions anytime you're doing a job like this. Certainly do not want to do all this and not torque it down properly. Okay, we got the lower intake in place, we got all the bolts snugged down, and it's very, very important to torque all these bolts. It's also important to torque them the proper sequence. I went inside, looked up the actual torque amount and what sequence, and you actually go from the inside and work your way out. And I made myself a little cheat sheet so I knew which way to go. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you torque each one, and you do it, I like to do it in 3 stages. The first stage is snug them all down. Second stage, you get them close to the total torque. Third stage, you torque them all the way to the total amount. These particular bolts get torqued to 11 foot-pounds. You got to be careful because the lower intake gets tightened to foot-pounds. The upper intake gets tightened to inch-pounds. Big difference, and you'll know if you mix them up because you'll definitely break a bolt off if you tighten it too tight. These are the 2 wrenches you'll need. You'll need a foot-pound torque wrench, which is usually a bigger one, and then this is an inch-pound torque wrench. And basically these are real simple. You just unlock them by popping it up, turn it to whatever number you need, lock it down, tighten them up. So we did that for all these bolts. They're all bolted down securely. Make sure you look up your own vehicle's exact year, make, and model to get the correct torque, because vehicles do differ by year, make, and model.